I want to speak to you today about a profound reality that many of us struggle with, a reality that echoes through the very core of human relationships, the intricacies of the heart, and the subtle war between what is good and what is damaging. There is a pursuit that so many of you find yourselves wrapped up in, an anxious pursuit, one that consumes you, overwhelms you, and often leads to frustration and despair. But let me tell you, this pursuit that you've been so desperately chasing, it was never meant to define you, to captivate you, or to shape your identity. You have been pursuing something that does not satisfy. And I am not here to make light of that, but rather to call you to something deeper, something far greater, something that will bring peace to your troubled soul. For far too long, you've been running after a shadow, a mirage that seems to promise comfort, but instead only leaves you empty. You've been chasing after something, someone, and you've believed the lie that in chasing this, you would find wholeness, fulfillment, or perhaps even love. But here's the truth. As long as you continue chasing this illusion, you will never find the peace your heart longs for. It's a vicious cycle, isn't it? You chase and chase and chase. But there is always distance between you and the one you so desperately seek. You find yourself trapped, unable to break free. It feels like you are bound to a pattern that you can't escape. But I tell you this with all the urgency in my heart, that this is not the path to life. It's the path to despair. Now, some of you might think that the answer to your anxieties in doing more pursuing, more chasing harder. But the reality is you've been looking in the wrong places and you've been following the wrong impulses. You've been operating out of a heart that's driven by fear and insecurity. You've been afraid that if you stop chasing, you will lose everything that you believe defines you. That if you stop the chase, you will cease to exist, you will cease to matter. I understand this fear. I understand how it grips you, but let me tell you, this is not the fear that God calls us to live in. This is not the fear that leads to peace. This is the fear that leads to bondage. You must ask yourself, why do you chase after things that were never meant to fulfill you? Why do you place your identity in the pursuit of something or someone that cannot bring lasting satisfaction? This is not just a problem of relationships, it is a problem of your soul. You have been misled by your own desires, by the culture around you, and by the lies of the world that tell you that fulfillment comes from the pursuit of others, the pursuit of approval, the pursuit of recognition. But listen carefully, your soul was never designed to find peace in the chase. Your soul was created to find peace in something far greater, far more profound than any relationship or fleeting satisfaction this world offers. The chase has kept you bound in anxiety, and now is the time for you to stop running. We live in a world that tells us that we must have everything now, that we must grasp at whatever we can and hold on to it for dear life. It tells us that our worth is found in what we have, in what we control, in what we possess. And yet, in the midst of this frantic pursuit, there is no peace. You can gain the world, you can even gain the affections of others, but you will never have peace until you cease chasing what cannot satisfy. It's time to stop running. It's time to stop chasing after someone who isn't even running toward you. You see, your anxiety is a symptom of a deeper problem. It's not just about who you are chasing. It's about what you are placing your hope in. It's about where you are looking for fulfillment. If you seek your fulfillment in anyone or anything other than the Lord, you will always be left wanting. I need you to hear this with the fullness of my heart. The answer is not in the chase. The answer is in surrender. The answer is in recognizing that peace does not come from the other person. Peace does not come from your ability to control the situation or manipulate the circumstances. Peace only comes when you surrender to the will of God. Peace comes when you stop trying to force things and you trust that God, in His perfect timing, will bring about what He has ordained for your life. Listen to me carefully. God did not create you to live in anxiety. God did not create you to live in fear. He created you for something far greater than this. You are not meant to live with a heart that is constantly in turmoil, constantly in doubt, constantly in pursuit of something that will never satisfy. No, God created you to live in the peace that surpasses all understanding. He created you to live with confidence, not in yourself, not in your own abilities, but in His promises. And He promises that He will never leave you, that He will never forsake you. He promises that if you seek Him with all your heart, you will find Him. The truth is, your heart is restless because you've been trying to fill it with things that cannot hold it. You've been looking to another person to make you whole, and that is a weight that no human being can bear. It is an idol. And God will not share His glory with another. Your peace can only be found in Him. The moment you stop running, the moment you stop chasing after things that were never meant to complete you, is the moment when you begin to find true rest. And in that rest, you will find strength, you will find healing, and you will find a peace that is not dictated by what others do or do not do. It will be a peace that comes from the very heart of God himself. Now, let me remind you of this. There are two forces at play here, the anxious heart and the avoidant one. The anxious heart chases and the avoidant heart withdraws, but neither is free. Both are bound by fear, bound by insecurity. The anxious heart believes that if it chases hard enough, it will find peace. The avoidant heart believes that if it withdraws enough, it will avoid pain. But both are wrong. Both are trapped in the same cycle, in the same lie, which is that peace can be found in anything other than God's sovereign will. The answer is not for the anxious heart to chase harder, nor for the avoidant heart to hide deeper. The answer is for both to cease from their striving, to cease from their restlessness, and to find their hope in the one who holds all things together. And what does that look like? It means you must take your eyes off the chase. It means you must stop seeking your fulfillment in the approval of others, in the love of others, in the affection of others. And it means that you must place your trust, your hope, and your identity in Christ alone. Your worth is not found in the approval of others. It is found in the fact that God, the creator of the universe, loved you so much that he sent his only son to die for you. So what do? You stop running, you stop chasing, and you rest. Rest in his promises. Rest in his love. Rest in the knowledge that he holds your future in his hands and that he will lead you according to his perfect plan. The anxious heart and the avoidant heart both need to come to the same conclusion: you are not in control. God is, and that is a good thing. That is a freeing thing. You see, the moment you cease chasing after what is fleeting, the moment you stop trying to control outcomes, is the moment you begin to experience true freedom. True freedom comes when you stop trying to force life into your mold and allow God to shape you into his image. Would you like me to continue? Let me know if you'd like more, if you'd like to add something specific. The speech emphasizes that constantly chasing after someone or something, whether it's seeking validation, affection, or approval from others, will never bring true peace or satisfaction. This anxious pursuit is driven by fear and insecurity, which ultimately leads to frustration and bondage. True peace and fulfillment come not from the chase, but from surrendering to God's will. The anxious heart and the avoidant heart alike need to stop striving and trust in God's perfect plan. Peace is found in resting in God's promises and recognizing that he is in control. The message encourages both the anxious and avoidant hearts to stop striving to control relationships or outcomes. True freedom comes when you cease trying to force life into your mold and allow God to shape you. By letting go of the need to control and trusting in God's sovereignty, you can find peace, healing, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. The illusion of fulfillment through the chase is something that every single one of us encounters at some point in life, and for many of us, it becomes a lifelong battle. We are conditioned by the world around us to believe that fulfillment, contentment, peace, and even love are things that can be earned, chased after, or obtained through relentless pursuit. But I must tell you, the pursuit of these things in the wrong way, the constant chase for something outside of ourselves, will never bring you what you are looking for. No matter how hard you chase, no matter how far you run, you will find yourself coming up empty. You will find yourself with a heart that is restless, a soul that is unsatisfied, and a life that is unfulfilled. It's a fundamental lie of this world that happiness and fulfillment can be acquired through the chase. This is not just about relationships, though that's often where it is most evident. It's about the way we approach life itself. The world has trained us to believe that fulfillment is something external. We are taught that we must chase after possessions, achievements, relationships, status, approval, and success, and that these things, when obtained, will bring us the peace and fulfillment we desperately long for. But here's the problem. When we chase after these things, when we place our identity, our worth, and our joy in external fleeting circumstances, we are setting ourselves up for an endless, exhausting pursuit. It's like running after a mirage in the desert, believing that just beyond the next dune we will find an oasis, only to discover that it was never there. The moment we think we've caught up, the mirage shifts and we're left empty-handed once again, caught in the cycle of yearning for something that is always just out of reach. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Think about the things you've chased after: relationships, approval, success, possessions, comfort, and ask yourself, has the chase ever truly satisfied you? Has it ever given you the peace and contentment you were looking for? Maybe for a fleeting moment, but then the desire returns. The cycle continues, and each time the chase becomes more frantic, more desperate, more consuming. In the realm of relationships, this illusion of fulfillment is often seen in the anxious heart that is constantly chasing the approval and affection of others. The anxious heart is gripped by the belief that if it can just gain the love or attention of someone else, then it will be whole, complete, and at peace. But no matter how much you chase after that love, no matter how much effort you put into gaining someone's approval or affection, it will never be enough. There is always more to be sought, always more to be earned, and eventually this chase leaves you exhausted, feeling empty and uncertain of your own worth. What is the root of this problem? The root is that we place our hope in the wrong places. We put our identity in what others think of us, in the things we accomplish, in the things we possess, or in the way the world defines success. We begin to believe the lie that our fulfillment is dependent on these things. But these things, these fleeting, temporal things, can never provide the lasting peace and joy that we are truly seeking. We are always left wanting more because these things are incapable of satisfying the deep needs of the soul. Why does this happen? It happens because we were never designed to find fulfillment in the things of this world. Our hearts were made to find peace, joy, and satisfaction in one place only, in God Himself. The more we chase after the illusion of fulfillment in external things, the further we move away from the true source of fulfillment. We were created to be satisfied in a relationship with God, to our identity in Him, and to rest in the security of His love and sovereignty. But we often lose sight of this truth, and we begin to look for fulfillment in the wrong places, chasing after empty promises instead of trusting in the one who is the source of all peace and contentment. I want to make this very clear: the chase for fulfillment in anything or anyone other than God will never end. It cannot end. You may think that if you just work a little harder, if you just try a little longer, if you just change your approach, then you'll finally catch the thing that will complete you. But that's a lie. The fulfillment you seek cannot be found in the chase. It can only be found in surrender. It can only be found when you cease striving after the fleeting things of this world and learn to rest in the unshakable, unchanging love of God. The truth is that fulfillment is not about what you do or what you obtain. It's about who you are in Christ. You are not defined by your relationships, your accomplishments, your possessions, or your status. You are defined by who God says you are, and He says that you are His beloved. He says that you are a child of God and heir to His kingdom, and that nothing can separate you from His love. That's where true fulfillment is found, not in chasing after things that will never bring you lasting joy. You may think, but how can I just stop chasing? How can I stop seeking validation, approval, love, or success? And I understand that. I understand the weight of that struggle. We've been conditioned to believe that our worth is tied to what we achieve, to how others perceive us, to how much we possess. It's hard to let go of these things because we've built our identities around them. But here's the thing: when we stop chasing, when we let go of the need to control and possess, we open ourselves up to the peace and fulfillment that can only come from God. It's only when we surrender our need for validation, our need for approval, our need for success, that we begin to experience the freedom and rest that God offers. The anxious heart will never find peace in the chase, and the avoidant heart will never find peace in withdrawal. Both are misguided, both are chasing after something that can never satisfy. The anxious heart tries to control the outcome by running after what it wants. The avoidant heart tries to control the outcome by running away from what it fears. But both are trapped in a cycle of fear, insecurity, and restlessness. The key is not to chase harder or withdraw more. The key is to stop, to cease striving, to surrender. This isn't a call to passivity. This isn't a call to disengage from life, relationships, or respility. No, this is a call to cease from the striving, to cease from seeking fulfillment in things that will never satisfy. It's a call to trust in God's plan for your life, to rest in His provision, and to find your identity in Him alone. True peace comes when you stop chasing. True fulfillment comes when you let go of the false promises of this world and learn to rest in the truth of who God is and who you are in Him. The chase will never bring you what you're looking for. It will only exhaust you, frustrate you, and leave you wanting more. But when you stop chasing and start resting, that's when you will find the peace that passes all understanding. That's when you will find the fulfillment that your heart has been longing for all along. And so I implore you today to stop running, stop chasing after the things that can never give you the peace and fulfillment you seek. Surrender your heart to the one who holds it all in His hands. Rest in His promises, trust in His timing, and allow Him to fulfill the deepest longings of your soul. You were never meant to chase after the wind. You were meant to rest in the unchanging, everlasting love of God. That's where true fulfillment is found. That's where peace begins. There comes a point in each of our lives where we are faced with a crossroads, a moment of decision that calls us to surrender our will, our desires, and our understanding to something greater than ourselves. The call to surrender is not an easy one. It is not a call that comes with comfort or ease. It is a call that demands everything. It asks us to lay down our burdens, our anxieties, our striving, and our sense of control, and instead to rest in something far deeper, far more secure, and far more fulfilling than anything this world can offer. Surrender is the antidote to the anxiety that so many of us feel. The anxious heart is always looking for something to hold on to, something to control, something to chase after in hopes of finding peace and fulfillment. But in our constant pursuit, we never truly find rest. No matter how hard we chase, we remain restless because the very nature of the chase is rooted in fear, insecurity, and a misguided belief that we are the ones in control. The truth is, we were never meant to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We were never meant to try to orchestrate every detail of our lives or manipulate the circumstances around us to ensure that we are fulfilled. That kind of burden is too heavy for the human soul to bear, and it is a burden that God never intended for us to carry. The call to surrender is a call to release that burden. It is a call to let go of our need to control, to manipulate, and to chase after what we think we need in order to find peace. But this surrender does not mean passivity or resignation. It does not mean that we stop living or striving altogether. It does not mean that we give up on everything that matters. No, surrender is not about giving up hope or giving up on the good things that God has for us. Surrender is about recognizing that peace and fulfillment cannot be found in our own efforts. Surrender is the act of releasing our need to control the outcomes of our lives and instead resting in God's sovereignty and His perfect plan for us. You see, the very heart of surrender is trust. It is a deep, unwavering trust in God's goodness, His wisdom, and His power. It is the trust that, no matter what circumstances we face, no matter how difficult or confusing life may seem, God is in control. He is sovereign over everything. His ways are higher than ours, and His understanding surpasses anything we could ever fathom. The call to surrender is therefore a call to acknowledge our limitations and to trust in the one who is limitless. It is a call to stop fighting against God's will, to stop trying to force things into our own timeline, and to stop worrying about the future. Instead, it is an invitation to find rest in the knowledge that God has a plan, that He is working all things together for our good, and that He will never leave us or forsake us. The anxious heart by nature is a heart that is constantly looking for security and control. It is always scanning the horizon, trying to find something or someone that can bring peace and assurance. But the problem is that we are looking in the wrong places. We are looking to people, circumstances, achievements, and possessions to provide the peace that only God can give. And no matter how much we accumulate, how much we strive, or how much we try to manipulate our environment, we will always be left wanting. That's because the peace we seek is not something we can earn or acquire on our own. It is not something that comes from external sources. True peace comes from within, and it comes when we cease striving and begin to rest in God's presence and His promises. The call to surrender is not just a call to rest from external activity, it is a call to rest from internal turmoil. So often we feel the need to strive in our hearts and minds, to wrestle with our emotions, to try to make sense of everything, to figure out the answers, to solve the problems. But the Bible is clear that God has not called us to bear the weight of our worries, our anxieties, or our fears. Instead, He invites us to cast all our cares upon Him, for He cares for us. When we surrender, we stop trying to control the outcome. We stop carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, and instead we rest in the assurance that God is carrying us. He is holding our lives in His hands, and He is guiding us with wisdom and love. But surrender is not a one-time act. It is not something we do once and then move on. Surrender is a daily choice. Every day we are confronted with the temptation to take back control, to step out of God's will, and to start chasing after our own desires again. Every day we are presented with the opportunity to either trust in God's sovereignty or to try to make things happen on our own. Surrender is a constant act of turning our hearts toward God, of acknowledging our dependence on Him, and of submitting our will to His. This kind of surrender requires humility. It requires us to recognize that we do not have all the answers, that we are not capable of managing our own lives, and that we are not the ultimate authority. Humility is the recognition that we are finite and limited, and that the God who created us is infinitely wise, infinitely good, and infinitely powerful. Humility is the willingness to say, I do not have control, but I trust in the one who does. And when we surrender, when we stop chasing, we begin to experience a peace that goes beyond understanding. It is a peace that comes not from our circumstances, but from the presence of God in our lives. It is a peace that transcends all the fears, all the worries, and all the uncertainties that we face. It is a peace that comes when we cease from our striving and rest in the fact that God is working all things together for our good. This peace is not the absence of trouble. It is not the absence of difficulty. It is not the absence of pain or hardship. No, this peace is something much deeper. It is a peace that holds us steady in the midst of the storm. It is a peace that comforts us when we are grieving. It is a peace that strengthens us when we are weak. It is a peace that comes from knowing that no matter what we face, God is with us and He will never leave us or forsake us. Surrender is also a call to rest in God's provision. We spend so much of our lives striving for what we think we need. We chase after success, after approval, after affirmation, after the things that we believe will bring us fulfillment. But God has already provided everything we need in Christ. He is our provider, and He has promised to supply all our needs according to His riches and glory. When we surrender, we trust that God will provide for us in His perfect timing and according to His perfect will. We no longer have to strive to accumulate things for ourselves. We can rest in the fact that God will meet our needs and that His provision is always good and always sufficient. Surrendering to God is also a call to rest in His grace. We live in a world that constantly tells us that we must earn our worth, that we must prove ourselves, that we must work harder, be better, do more in order to gain approval and acceptance. But the gospel of Jesus Christ stands in stark contrast to this message. The gospel tells us that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. It tells us that we are saved by grace through faith, not by works. When we surrender, we stop trying to earn God's love, approval, or favor. We rest in the grace that has already been given to us through Jesus Christ. We no longer have to strive to be good enough. We are already accepted, already loved, and already forgiven because of what Jesus has done for us. This surrender is the path to true freedom. We think that control is freedom. We think that if we can just manage every detail of our lives, if we can just make everything go according to our plan, then we will be free. But the truth is, control is slavery. The more we try to control our lives, the more we become enslaved to our own desires, fears, and anxieties. Freedom comes when we surrender control to God, when we trust that He is working everything out for our good, and when we rest in His sovereignty. Only then can we truly be free. Surrendering to God is not a one-time event. It is a daily act of choosing to trust, choosing to rest, and choosing to let go of our need to control. But it is in this surrender that we find true peace, true fulfillment, and true freedom. When we stop chasing, when we stop striving, when we stop trying to make everything happen on our own, we open ourselves to the rest, the peace and the grace that God so freely gives. There is a profound truth that many of us overlook in the midst of our daily lives and struggles. True freedom comes when we cease striving. Our culture, our minds, and even our hearts are conditioned to believe that freedom is the ability to do whatever we want, to chase after whatever we desire, to achieve whatever we think we need to be fulfilled. We are taught that freedom is found in our independence, our ability to control our own destinies, and our capacity to acquire what we think will bring us happiness. But the reality is that this is not freedom, it is bondage. It is slavery to our desires, to our fears, and to the constant cycle of striving that never seems to end. True freedom comes when we stop striving for things that only lead to exhaustion, frustration, and emptiness. True freedom is found when we let go of the need to control and instead we rest in the perfect sovereignty of God. We live in a world that places an immense amount of pressure on us to perform, to achieve, to constantly push ourselves to the limit, and to prove ourselves worthy. From the moment we are born, there seems to be an unspoken expectation that we will strive, and achieve. The relentless pursuit of success, status, and self-fulfillment is built into the very fabric of modern society. We are taught that we are only valuable if we are constantly progressing, constantly prove our worth through our work, our relationships, and our accomplishments. This pressure becomes internalized, and we begin to believe that if we stop striving, if we stop pushing ourselves to do more, be more, and have more, we will somehow fall short, we will be left behind, or we will be unworthy. But the truth is, the more we strive, the more we become enslaved to a life that is never truly satisfying. The more we chase after fleeting achievements, accolades, and possessions, the more we lose sight of what truly matters. The harder we try to control the outcomes of our lives, the more we realize that we are not in control at all. We chase after success thinking it will bring us fulfillment, but we find ourselves disillusioned. We chase after relationships thinking they will bring us peace, but we find ourselves empty. We chase after approval thinking it will make us feel worthy, but we find ourselves exhausted and insecure. The cycle continues, and yet the more we strive, the further we drift from the peace we so desperately desire. It is in the midst of this chaos, this endless striving, that we are called to something different, a calling that invites us to stop striving, to cease from our labor and to rest. This call is not a call to passivity or complacency, it is a call to freedom. True freedom is found not in striving for more, but in ceasing from the incessant pursuit of things that can never bring lasting peace. It is found when we stop chasing and instead choose to rest in the truth that God is sovereign, that He is in control, and that His plan for us is better than anything we could ever achieve on our own. The foundation of true freedom is trust. It is trust in God's sovereignty, trust that He is working all things together for our good, trust that He is in control, even when life seems uncertain, and trust that His timing is perfect. We are not in control. We do not have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders. We do not have to constantly strive to prove our worth or chase after things that will never satisfy. When we truly understand this, we begin to experience a freedom that is beyond anything the world can offer. Freedom is not about doing what we want when we want. Freedom is about letting go of the illusion of control and trusting in the one who holds all things in His hands. Ceasing the striving does not mean that we stop living, working, or pursuing goals. It does not mean that we abandon our responsibilities or stop striving to become the people God has called us to be. It means that we stop striving to prove ourselves, to gain approval, to secure our own happiness through our own efforts. It means that we stop chasing after things that will never satisfy and begin to trust that God will provide everything we need. The freedom that comes through ceasing the striving is a freedom that enables us to live in peace, knowing that God is the one who is guiding our steps, that He is the one who is equipping us for the work He has called us to, and that He is the one who will bring about His perfect plan for our lives. The heart of striving is often rooted in fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of not measuring up, fear of my turn, fear of losing control. And it is this fear that drives us to work harder, to push ourselves beyond our limits, to chase after things that will never bring us the security and fulfillment we crave. We strive because we are afraid of what will happen if we stop. We are afraid of what will happen if we let go and trust. We fear that if we stop striving, we will lose everything, but the reality is that when we stop striving, we gain everything. We gain peace, we gain rest, we gain security in the knowledge that God is the one who is in control, not us. When we cease striving, we cease living in a constant state of anxiety and worry. The more we strive, the more we become anxious about the future, about what we have yet to accomplish, and about what we have not yet obtained. But true freedom is found when we stop living in the anxiety of what if and instead choose to rest in the certainty of God will. God will provide. God will lead. God will work all things together for our good. When we cease striving, we stop living in a constant state of fear and anxiety, and we begin to live in the peace that comes from knowing that God is in control. Freedom through ceasing the striving also means letting go of our need to control the outcome of our lives. We are all familiar with the need to plan, to strategize, and to work toward our goals. But when we become consumed by the need to control every detail of our lives, we miss out on the beauty of surrender. We forget that we do not have the power to make things happen the way we want them to. We forget that our plans are limited and finite, but God's plans are infinite and perfect. We strive to make everything fit into our carefully constructed plans, but we often find that life does not go the way we want it to. And when that happens, we are left feeling frustrated, disappointed, and defeated. But when we cease striving, when we let go of our need to control the outcome, we can rest in the knowledge that God is leading us in ways that we may not understand, but that are always for our good. This surrender is not a surrender to passivity. It is not a call to do nothing. It is a surrender to God's will, a surrender to His timing, and a surrender to His plan. It is a surrender that allows us to work diligently and faithfully, but without the constant burden of trying to control every outcome. It is a surrender that says, God, I trust you with the outcome. I will do my part, but I will leave the rest to you. The paradox of true freedom is this: we gain freedom when we stop striving for it. When we let go of the need to control and the need to prove ourselves, we open ourselves up to a life of peace, joy, and fulfillment that does not depend on what we achieve or how much we accumulate. The striving heart is always looking for something more, always reaching for something just out of reach, and always coming up empty. But the heart that ceases striving and trusts in God's sovereignty can rest in the security that He will provide what is needed in His perfect time. The freedom that comes through ceasing the striving is a freedom from the weight of self-reliance. It is a freedom from the constant pressure to perform, to achieve, to meet expectations, and to prove our worth. It is a freedom from the burden of trying to be everything to everyone, and from the exhaustion of trying to meet the demands of this world. It is a freedom that comes when we stop chasing after things that can never satisfy and instead choose to rest in the love and grace of God. This is the freedom that leads to peace, the peace that comes when we cease striving and trust that God will take care of the rest.